Good evening. So when I started this channel a couple years back, made over 200, almost 250 videos now, many of which about Bigfoot and Dogman and all sorts of cryptozoological creatures. Also fieldwork videos. And like I said previously, we're going to start getting into more movie reviews. And when I said that, a lot of people chimed in on movies they wanted me to review or get my 2 cents on. And you can leave them in the comments, by the way, if you think there's a movie I should watch. I've got a running list I started. But one of the most requested videos, like above, far and away, was Dog Soldiers. And I'd heard of the movie. I'd seen stills from it. In fact, when people talk about Dogman or werewolves to another degree, a lot of the imagery and some of the costumes and stuff like that, some of the stills from the movies have been used to describe them. In fact, I think I've even used them in a few videos in the past. And when I started watching it, you can see here I assumed the position with both my cats. Apparently they didn't want me to get too much into dogs or something. Anyway, so I started watching it, and I quickly realized that I had seen parts of this movie, I think on Sci-Fi Channel years ago. It came out in 2002, so it's been out for quite a while. I actually really enjoyed it. I found it free on YouTube. A friend of mine sent me the link, and apparently there's a couple channels that have it for free. So I left the link below if you guys want to watch it on YouTube. Luckily, I've got a Roku, and I can just export it up to my TV, so I'm not stuck watching it on my phone or iPad or whatever. As far as the movie itself, incredibly well done. I was very impressed by it. A lot of modern action sci-fi horror movies could learn a lot from this movie. There's some kind of corny foreshadowing that in the very opening scene, the guy gets handed, "Oh, here's a letter opener for you for doing such a great job at work," and they start kissing in the tent, and lo and behold, they get attacked by werewolves. And there's a little bit of foreshadowing. What I also liked, especially being kind of a gun guy, being kind of a gun nerd, is I always look for accuracy in movies. So many movies get guns wrong. Where silencers completely silence, or they never run out of ammo. And in this movie, they're counting rounds, they're running out of ammo, they're reloading all the times, guns jam. They used Browning high powers, and they showed them with L85s, with SUSAT sights, and they're a bunch of British military guys. They got the guns right, which is so cool. They got the camo right. They got kind of the style right. I mean, it was actually very believable that this was a military unit that we were looking at. And starts off, this is a really good example, this movie, of how to pay homage to certain genres and certain specific movies without being a blatant ripoff. Now, they're early on when they're moving through the woods and they're getting picked off and stuff. There's a lot of Predator homage there, something stalking them in the woods, taking them out one by one, and their guns are having some effect. And that's the other thing I do like. There's so many movies like Jurassic Park and a lot of other movies out there where they're supernatural or not so supernatural, just a big animal, and people are spraying machine gun rounds into it, and it's having no effect at all. Well, in this movie, the guns didn't outright kill these things. They howled, chunks of flesh flew off, it hurt them. If a werewolf ran at them and they blasted it with one of their MP5s, it howled and blood shot onto the walls, and it ran away and came back. Now, they showed in the movie the only way to... By the way, this movie's from 2012 or from 2002, so I'm not too worried about spoilers. So they weren't outright killing them with guns, but it was definitely repelling them and hurting them, and they were able to clunk them over the head with pots and pans and stab them with knives and swords and stuff that they found. And it was really brutal. There's so many movies like any Aliens versus Predators, a lot of those other movies where they got where it shows the alien skull, the inner mouth going right through like a Kevlar helmet, and I'm like, okay, that's a bit much, or they blast a monster from 10 feet away with a 30-round magazine from a rifle, and it has no effect. At least in this movie, it had effects. And so they got the guns right, they got the soldiers right, they got the interactions right. There's cues to the Matrix in there, believe it or not. They're cues to Predator and a lot of other stuff. But let's talk about the special effects. Hollywood can learn a lot. This is obviously a low-budget movie, probably a couple $1 million. And if a director is smart and a producer is smart, they will put all that money into the effects. and keep the story, because I think 20% of this movie was outside and the rest was in a farmhouse, obviously a set or an old farmhouse or something, and they can blow it up and knock out the walls or whatever. So they put all their money into the special effects, all their money into the creature effects. You can see one there. And as far as I can tell, there wasn't really any CGI in the movie. 2002, I guess there could have been some CGI in the movie. But I didn't really see much in there. There might have been some, but everything looked super practical effects, like real blanks, real shell casings coming out of the guns actually locking up, real footsteps. And it always gets me is, there'll be a production company that spends, 20, 30, 40, 60 million dollars to make a 3D model, to make a completely computer generated werewolf, and they spend all this money to get the lighting right and the shadowing right, like to make sure that it's a bright light but there's not much of a shadow, and how it moves and the depth of it and how it looks on screen and how the muscles flex. When it's like a really good practical effects artist, you could make the thing in real life and you could put real light on it and film it with real film, and it'll look better than some of the best CGI out there. In fact, there was a YouTube video I saw the other day. It was like, is CGI getting worse? And I think, a surprising amount of practical effects, and I think you're starting to see that in some genres in Hollywood, like in like the last Road Warrior movie they did a few years ago, Mad Max Fury Road. They did a lot of practical special effects, and it's just like you just can't cheat that kind of weight and that kind of gravity. Maybe for some muzzle flashes or small things here you use it, but putting it into practical effects and real sets, I love that. And I think, watching it on YouTube, by the way, and watching it on screens and it was a really pretty poor quality version that I saw. I'm sure if I found it on Blu-ray and had a nicer TV and it was all digitally cleaned up, it would probably look even better. But I thoroughly enjoyed the movie, and it was definitely worth the price of entrance, which was free on YouTube. You kind of saw where the story was going, but it had a few twists and turns in there to kind of keep you guessing. And, very suspenseful, very Predator-like in some sense, and I really appreciated it. They like I said, they were able to knock on the door of certain movies without being blatant rip-offs. So one of the things people who are on this channel, people who subscribe to me, and people who are generally into cryptozoology and Bigfoot have heard of this Dogman creature. And as surprising as it is, people all across the United States and all across the world are seeing an upright walking huge wolf creature, 7, 8, 9, 10 feet tall sometimes. Huge shoulders, like a cross between a man and a dog. And these have had a long history all throughout the United States and many sightings, and we've made a lot of videos and talked about it quite a lot here on this channel. And while I think the werewolf thing is completely different than the Dogman thing, this Dogman thing, from all reports, is it's creature. It doesn't transform. It's not a human that transforms into a werewolf and goes on a spree and turns back into the morning, or can be affected by silver. I think that's a lot of Hollywood and folklore. And could there be real werewolves out there? I suppose so. But the Dogman thing is definitely something else. And I think if a person, especially through history, would go into the woods, like a man would walk home from the bar and I'm going to cut through the woods or something in their village, in their pub, and they never found him again, but then they saw this Dogman creature roaming around attacking people, they might assume that person turned into him, or especially in the ages of witchcraft, when the Dogman could have just ate the person, especially when they find clothes and they say, oh no, he transformed into a werewolf or something, Who knows? So definitely the stories of werewolves all throughout tradition, and the stories of dogman and dog-headed men all throughout history certainly have something to do with our fascination with werewolves. And this movie was great because it didn't introduce vampires. It didn't over-explain. This movie was a great example of show, don't tell. I mean, some of the characters dropped little hints and had little stories here and there, but you pretty much got to see transformations. You pretty much got to see packs of them and how they hunted and how they moved. And so that was very cool, and I really appreciated that. So One of the things that I would say required listening or reading is The Siege of Lockett Ranch by Dark Waters. Now, I know a lot of people don't like Dark Waters. Some people are huge Vic Cundiff fans, and some people like Dark Waters and don't like Vic Cundiff. I like both of them. I think they're great guys, and they tell great stories. Any personal beliefs or anything you don't like against them, that's out the window for me. I just look for their content. And it's a couple years old now, but The Siege of Lockett Ranch, he released it in 3 parts. Then he did where he combined all 3 parts, and it's about an hour long. Go check it out. There's a link to this in the description below in the video. There's also a link to Dog Soldiers and Movies, but I've listened to The Siege of Lockett Ranch a couple times. Every now and then I listen to it. That and The Siege of Honabi, every once in a while, I just like to listen to. And it certainly had a lot of cues and reminders of that. The Siege of Lockett Ranch is a fully fictitious story, though they did a really good job, and it almost seems like maybe they took cues from the movie. But I really do think there's this dogman creature, as crazy as it is, and I do think that there are reports of them harassing people and trying to break into houses and generally trying to do nefarious things. So to have a movie about werewolves where you're trapped in a house and they're trying to break in and do nefarious things, there's going to be some situations there. So I think this movie is very good to kind of give you an idea of what some people are seeing with this dogman creature. So to sum it up, this movie, I'm giving it 4 out of 5 stars. Now, the acting isn't superb. The practical effects are great. There are some problems in the movie, no big plot holes. It's just a fun horror film that's done really well with the budget it has. I know critics have panned it. I'm not the typical critic, and I know it has a huge cult following, and I think it's one of those movies when you start looking into the subcontext of it, the homage it pays to other movies, and it's just a lot of fun. And in the end of the day, you want to have a lot of fun at the movies. So this is a good solid 4 stars. Highly recommended, especially if you're into Bigfoot, if you're into Dogman, if you're into horror stuff, and you're not into shiny vampires and beautiful werewolves. You just want to see a gritty, tear apart, guns, action movie. This is great. And as far as the goriness, there are some blood and gut scenes, but it really wasn't too bad. It really wasn't over the top. So I like it. It goes on my recommended list. Thank you guys very much. And if you like what you see, please hit the subscribe button and ring the little notification bell. And leave me comments below on what other movies you think I should review. And most importantly, stay safe in the woods, folks.